היי נועה. שומעת אותי?
כן.
נועה?
כן, כן, אני שומעת.
אוקיי, אני רק בודקת שזה בסדר, כי אני נכנסתי כבר לאוטו, אני עוד בתוך העיר, אבל אני לא אוכל אחר כך לעשות שום דבר עם הטלפון.
בסדר.
יאללה, אז להתראות. תודה.
ערב טוב לכולם.
ערב טוב.
ערב טוב.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, Anila.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
How is everybody?
Good. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, everybody. Nice. So it looks like, last time we talked about death, wasn't it? So we still talk about death today. So finally, hopefully, we will do the death absorptions today so that you get familiar with the stages, because that's quite, for me, I think it's quite important. But if you think that, oh no, I don't need to know that, then you can tell me and then we skip it. But it is, especially when you are also with dying people, it's very helpful, because sometimes they describe these things. And as I already mentioned, it's all about the clear light, the nature of the mind, when nothing appears, that then you have the opportunity to become familiar with that natural state of the mind. And you would make great progress on this path to full awakening, or even, at the best, you would kind of attain enlightenment at that moment, because the mind is the clear light, like the nature of the mind. So I don't know if anybody of you is kind of familiar with the Tibetan book of the death and dying. I think, Ariela, you said you read it, right? By now you have, YouTube, where you can just put it on and somebody will read it to you it's usually a male voice, which is very deep and very calm and very loud and very kind of articulate like this. So you don't even have to find somebody who sits next to you who is explaining these stages. But I'm not going to explain that, because I'm not qualified to do that also, and it's quite profound. And also, again, it seems as if some Tibetan lamas, they say, yeah, these appearances that you have in the intermediate state, not while you are dying. When the mind is still in the body, then you only have these appearances of like a mirage, then smoke, then the kind of how to say, the sparks or the fireflies, then the flickering light, then the white appearance, the red one and the black one. That's what you have while the mind is still in the body, but after a certain time you would be declared death, but you're not dead yet, although you don't feel anything because the senses have absorbed it. It kind of, this whole thing has to do with elements, our senses, the 5 aggregates, that all of this kind of, collapses into each other like that. It's once you start to study it, and if you have the opportunity to be with people who are in the process of dying, then you are, it's quite helpful to know these things. Then what happens with the appearances when the mind gets out of the body and goes into the intermediate state? This especially is described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So basically what this person who is reading it to you is trying to say, don't be afraid, because everything is just a projection of your own mind, right? So, and this is good that we remember that already now, and it's good to, especially when you wake up after a dream and you can still remember the dream, to kind of, to make that imprint, or to make that understanding how much the mind can produce, that the mind can produce a total reality that is absolutely nothing there, tangible, but that your mind emotionally totally goes along with it and believes it, to kind of to deepen that understanding, so that when then maybe in the bardo, maybe when somebody reads it to you, or your guru is able to hook you or whatever, then maybe you remember something, because I don't think we will be able to kind of rely on our intellect, like same way when we are awake and somebody is getting on our nerves, or we have a very difficult situation and we notice that we're starting to get agitated and we're starting to get nervous, then you can go into your cortex, and with some thoughts you can start to calm down, isn't it? Can you do that when you're dreaming? Not really. So that's what we have to learn. This is what we have to kind of train and to learn, that when we are aware that, that not so much the dream, does it mean something? What is it? Is it good? Is it bad? It's not about this. It's about understanding that the mind can produce a reality that we totally believe in as being real, but it's not true. And when you take a Buddha, the word Buddha means awake, right? And so as opposed to a Buddha's mind, the way a Buddha's mind perceives, we are dreaming. But for us, because we're not Buddhas, that dream is real, the same way as for somebody who has a nightmare and you are watching that person, you can see that the person's mind is producing something that is not true, but you can only see that as an awake person. So this is how the Buddhas are seeing us. People who are locked in their dream and refuse to wake up, and this is why they give us all these methods to wake up. Now, when we speak like this, I think the danger sometimes is that we start to say, okay, so, well, if everything is a dream, so then what does it matter? So why should I react? Why should I create compassion? Why should I, study this and that, emptiness and all this? What would you say to that if somebody says that? You as experienced Dharma practitioners that you are. Yes.
It's
You're
not
talking. Edouard, you changed your name. All of a sudden, is that your last name?
That's my last name. Yes, I'm at work, so it's not the same computer.
Okay.
So
Edouard.
So, yeah, well, it's an image. It's not exactly a dream. We still live there's still reality. I mean, that's still the second facet of reality. It's not absolute reality, but it's still reality. In contrast to a dream, which is imaginary.
Right. Yeah. If you are eating in a dream, then, you still wake up with an empty stomach, even though you ate the most delicious things. Whereas if you eat, while you are so-called awake, then your stomach gets being filled. So that would be one answer. Could there be another answer? Because opposed to a Buddha, we are projecting everything. This is it, As you say, for us, it is real. But it's the same way, when you take somebody who is having a nightmare, they're fully inside of that nightmare. We can't go there. We're not living in the same reality. The person might be in an intensive care unit in the hospital, and the lights and the noise and all this, and the same as our mind does that. Have you ever noticed that when you're sleeping and something is happening outside, or you fall asleep with some pains in your body, and all of a sudden, your dreaming mind starts to create a story around it that is not true, but based on what is happening outside. Have you ever noticed that? This is really funny. So we can see that the person who is sleeping, maybe, or who is in an intensive care, and the coma that they put the person is not so deep that they still scream, or they still have some nightmares or whatever, that something is still going on. As a person who is awake, we can see that it's all projection. But for that person there, it is reality. And for us, even though for a Buddha, what we see is all projection, but for us it's real, and we have to act according to it. And we see the same thing in a dream. Even though if you would know that it's a dream, you would still react, wouldn't you? You wouldn't just say, it's just a dream, because you can't, because you're inside. You can't just say, oh, I'll just walk. Yeah. But you would react in a different way than the way we are reacting now. You wouldn't be so self-concerned. Actually, I think if we could dream, if the dreams were lucid, is that my something that is making a noise? Or is it somebody's telephone? Oh yeah, it is. Actually, I'm living in somebody's studio, and the phone that is fixed, this is the telephone, but it never ever rings. This is why I, go, oh, so it's over there. So sorry, we just let it ring because the person is not here. Anyway, so, okay. Gosh, they have a lot of patience. So we would still react because we're kind of inside, right? But we would react differently, and we all have values. Maybe in a dream where we're less afraid for ourselves, when we see it's just a dream, or a movie, you can say also, how would you, if you had the choice, it's a movie, if you had the choice, how would you react? Right? So this is also, but for us, it is reality, and we are stuck in that reality, and we have to take care of our actions in order to create the karma so that we're going to have another precious human rebirth, and not just that, so that we have a peaceful death and also an okay life, that we're not going around kind of harming everybody, because the people that we are harming, they feel the pain, the same way as you feel the pain when somebody is harming you. There's not much point just saying, oh, it's just a dream and it's all empty. This is not understanding conventional reality, because the conventional reality appears according to our karma. Because otherwise it would appear same way to everybody. Yeah. For example, conventional reality Yeah, just a sec. Conventional reality appears also according to our senses, like colors appear according to our senses. If we would be a dog, we would have less spectrums to see different colors. If we would be a shrimp, we would see much more colors. I mean, this is what science says. I don't know if it's true. I'm just repeating, but I thought it was interesting, you know. Yes, Netta.
Now that you're talking, this question, I know the question, but it seemed different today. And maybe because everything is a projection, so we have to work on it. It's not a reality that we are helpless.
No,
we are creating, so we have much work to do.
yeah, of course. This is it. It lies all in our own hands, and we have no choice. You know, if we want to be happy and if we want to be able to live our values that we all have, at least the people who are watching these programs here, values of patience, kindness, compassion, generosity, and the whole thing. If we want to be able to live them, then I mean, we have to work on our own mind in order to attain the happiness that we want. We have no other choice. And for this, we use the methods of the Buddha. And the methods are two kinds. It's like method or compassion and wisdom, the two wings of a Buddha that will bring you to the state that we all want to go to. And we're going to do a reflection on that. Where do we want to go to? Why are we practicing? Okay? So that you see this whole thing, it's about study is very important, but then you have to integrate, you have to bring it down from the head to the heart, kind of meaning you have to experience it. Not just in the head, oh, I want to become a Buddha. But really, the whole Lamrim, the whole teachings is like to really understand something there, what the Buddha says. So we try and do the reflection before we then go through the death absorptions. Yes, Stella, where are you? There you are, yeah. Ariella, did you have your hand up? Did you want to ask something? Say
Yes,
something?
further to just, you were saying where we want to go to. I have a question and I'll try to ask it clearly.
Okay.
Do we want to reach nirvana/liberation because we want to get out of the circle of rebirth, or are we actually working on our karma to be born in a good to a good real life? Did I explain myself?
Yes, you explained
I'm a
very
bit
well.
confused.
Ariella, this kind of, when you say we, there is no we in this. This is only I. What do I want? And then the Buddha gives us different options. And then again, you know, when you look at the Lamrim, which you probably are familiar with, right? You have these 3 stages, and each step or each stage is very important because otherwise we can't go to the higher one. So in order to have, when you say a good rebirth, and usually in Buddhist terms, or in Mahayana Buddhist terms, a good rebirth is a rebirth where you can practice well. So it's not too good, where you have absolutely no wish to practice because everything is going well. But it's also not too painful because your whole life is just, you know, struggle and fighting, and you don't have time to sit down and watch your mind because you're constantly active, and there's a lot of pain also. You know, when there's a lot of body pain, you cannot just sit down and watch your mind. This is impossible. Some people say, yeah. If there is pain, then I can really practice or watch my mind. So I always feel like, you know, when they're meditating, I would like to put a needle into their, just a small needle, you know, small one, to put into their leg and see how much they still can watch the pain. Yeah. So it's like we have these ideas. So the problem is when we are too well, and then we take all this for granted, and I'm not sick, I can think, I can, you know, my memory is more or less working well. Sometimes I'm really happy because just before somebody called me and said, aren't we going to the meditation? I said, huh? And he said, yeah, we're going to Martini, no? And I said, no, why? Today is Wednesday, because it's Tuesday, Thursday is the meditation. So he was standing in front of the door with the car to pick me up to go there. So then I thought, okay, my memory is also bad, but at least I'm not the only one. I tell you, it really helps if you see that you're not the only one. You know, this whole thing about we want to be perfect, and all this. But when you notice that other people have the same thing, it gives you more space. Yeah. So he was also wrong in the date. He thought it was Thursday, but it's Wednesday. So like this. So, you know, we need to have the conditions so that we can practice for liberation. So that's the next step. When we look at our karma and we try not to create negative actions, this is at the beginning, yes, definitely, is to, so that our next rebirth, you know, is in such a way that we have the possibilities to practice further on the path. When I say, where do we want to go to? And it's absolutely up to you. Everybody has the right to say, oh, samsara is okay. I'm just going to be careful that I'm not creating too much negative karma. And the negative karma I'm creating, I'm doing purification. I do a lot of kind of, you know, beneficial things. So I have the merit or the positive potential to then again go to a good rebirth. And that's good enough. I mean, many people say that who have really good lives. You know anybody like this who says, oh yeah, you know, you and your Buddhism and meditation and study, this is okay for you, but you know, I don't need this. I am well, I'm okay. I don't need all this stuff. Have you never heard somebody telling you these things when you said you're going for meditation? Yeah. Now, whether this is true that they're always happy or not happy, this is not for us to judge, okay? I'm not saying this for this. Maybe they are truly happy, you know? How do I know? But so we do need some pain, but not too much pain. And so we understand that even though we have no financial problems, we have no physical problems, like the family is okay, and the whole rest there, you know, what we dream of, we start to understand from the teachings of the Buddha that even though at the moment everything is okay, we start to understand what when we listen to the teachings of the Buddha. Dukkha. Not the first one, the suffering of pain, but the second one. What's the second one? Yeah, you don't have to, Edouard, you don't have to raise your hand. You know, you can just.
Well, you know, that's a habit.
in somebody's living room, you just say what you would like to say. Okay, Edouard.
The pain of change.
Yeah, the suffering of change, that it can end. You know, it can and we all know that. You can be healthy and boom, all of a sudden you're sick. You can have a lot of money in the bank, ooh, the whole money system goes whatever. You can have a lot of friends, all of a sudden they turn against you. You can have a very good marriage, all of a sudden you find out your partner's cheating on whatever, you know, it can end just like that. And it will end at the time of death anyway. So this is why this is one of the most important teachings of the Buddha is impermanence. Everything that our deluded mind is touching has the flavor of unsatisfactory already inside. This is why human beings are humankind with our intelligence, we're making so much progress because we understand we could have it in a better way. But then we start to fiddle around with the things outside, with the conditions. If it's too hot, then air condition gets invented. If it's too cold, then we have heatings. If it's the food is not healthy enough, then we go vegan and vegetarian and and this and that. And you know what I mean? Yes, Elisheva.
As long as I'm studying and practicing, my feeling is that like I'm going back home, like I'm finding the way back home. This is my feeling. And okay. I'm asking myself, how come that human being get lost in the forest. Why it come like this? Why we took the wrong direction? Like, why it happened like this?
How long did it take you to go in the right direction, this life?
I'm still on the way. I'm not in the,
No,
but the feeling changed.
When did you understand that what you were looking for was not the right thing?
Always, but the last
always.
I felt always like something is wrong, but I thought it's my fault. But now I understand it's not my fault. It's the way I used to think and to feel, and the society and education, and I didn't have the opportunity to realize all those things that coronavirus gave me as a present. Yes.
Oh, so it's the coronavirus who helped you to go to understand it, a lot of things, isn't it? Also, yeah.
Yes, it makes the other outside world more bullshit and the inside world more real. But now I'm thinking a lot of it. Why humankind took, I don't know, from the beginning, the wrong direction? Why it's because now we are it shouldn't be like this.
It shouldn't be like this, but it is like this. I mean, it took me 40 years to start to go in the right direction. I only started practicing, with my mind when I was 40. Seriously. Of course, as you say, I knew that something was wrong. I wasn't content. I wasn't happy, but because I was lucky enough to have a lot of money. Then I was kind of just spending all the money. I think I told you, I spent 3.5 years in the South Pacific, not working, just going from one island to the other. And then when I did, out of boredom, I came to Nepal because I also like mountains. The other one was snorkeling and diving, and in the South Pacific, a little bit of volcano climbing, but then I went to Nepal. And so I saw posture, meditation, something, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, not because I was looking for it. I just saw it. And I thought maybe I do this for a change. Or I can't remember what I thought. But anyway, I went. And then after the first Kopan course, I did this. It was with the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order. And they were explaining the wheel of life. And somehow I had the karma. I seemed to understand what this was all about. The 12 links of dependent arising. I thought wow, this is so clever. It is so, but that I had to get out of it. This I didn't understand. But how this whole thing happens, it seemed to click. And then I did, maybe a few months later, I came back to Nepal and I did a 10-day course and then a 1-month course. And only in the 1-month course, I thought shit, I am totally wasting my life. Just going from one pleasant situation to the other. Whenever I didn't like it anymore, I just went somewhere else. I went from Thailand to Nepal and back and this and that, everywhere. For 3.5 years. And then when I understood the precious human rebirth and maybe also some of the dukkha maybe and karma, I started to understand how much negative karma is lying on my mind, and that I would have probably a very nice life until I die, but that next life, oops, I don't know where I'm going to go. And so it's kind of going hey, now I have 2 possibilities. Either I go away and forget everything they said and just continue to have a so-called happy life, just having a lot of freedom because you have all that money, or I stay here and practice seriously. Now, the option of going away and forgetting the whole thing, that was not possible. How can you forget after you have understood something? You cannot forget. It's impossible. So then I decided to stay, and I stayed in India for 17 years. And I started practicing, but it took me 40 years. So this is why it seems that a few things need to come together to understand. Sometimes when people suffer a lot, they start to understand. Yeah, sometimes. Not naturally, or not automatically. Yeah. In general, automatically, when people suffer a lot, they become more negative. and create more negative karma because they're so stuck in the whole thing. And the condition outside, there's nobody there who can inspire them the way I think I was inspired by my guru, not directly, but he was probably able to touch something in me that was saying, hey, you're going the wrong way, stop. There's this nice story of the Buddha and Angulimala. Have you ever heard the story? There was this great, bandit or whatever, he was a cannibal, I think. He was eating people. And for each one that he killed and ate, he would cut one finger and he would make, a necklace. Like he would put the finger there and he said, when I have 1,000, I stop, right? So he saw the Buddha and he had 999 and he saw the Buddha and he thought, oh, great, this will be, no, actually his mother would have been the 1,000th one. And the Buddha he saw that with his clairvoyance and he thought, better he doesn't kill his mom because that's really, that's one of the 5 heinous crimes. And so he went so that he would see him. And so he was running after the Buddha and the Buddha was seemingly walking quite slow, but he couldn't catch up with him, that cannibal, Angulimala. And so he screamed, stop, stop, stop. And the Buddha just turned around and he said, I've stopped long ago. And Angulimala understood. Or also, when the first teaching of the Buddha, when he held up a flower and he was showing impermanence of the flower, and Kaundinya, who was in the audience also, he understood immediately and he attained liberation. So one also needs to have the insight, the karma, when outside conditions are there to practice the Dharma, that one, it's like a magnet that gets attracted and then starts. But we all want to be happy. So this is something that we all have, but very often people look in the wrong direction. So we can inspire somebody or we can put somebody off. If you want to teach my brother, when I became a nun, he thought I fell into a sect. I couldn't even talk about the weather. He thought I was teaching Dharma because I talked about weather and causes and condition. And all of a sudden, he said like, why are you with your Buddhism thing? I said, we're talking about the weather, causes and conditions. And so it's like, he was totally close to what I was doing. He was probably the only person that I knew closely. So it's like this, what can you do, So, but as Ariella was saying, and this is why we do the reflection now, is like, we need to know, where do I want to go? The teachings of the Buddha. That in order to have good human rebirth, you need to understand perfect human rebirth, impermanence and death, how karma works, and take refuge, right? So this is what we're going to do Friday, Saturday, by the way. The reflections on this, so that we start to internalize it. If you really take care of your actions, then you will have a good rebirth every time round. But then, once your conditions are quite good, then you can start at what is not right. Yeah, and then to put that right. So then the middle level is, hey, I want to get out of here. That means you want to have liberation. You would attain your personal nirvana. And then we start to look and say, but I'm totally dependent on others for my survival, for my enlightenment, because I need to practice the 6 perfections. So definitely the first 3, you need to practice, generosity, ethical conduct, and patience. For that, you need other people. How can you practice patience when nobody pushes your button? It's impossible, right? So we start to understand how dependent we are on others for our day-to-day survival and for our happiness. And so we think, maybe not the right way just to disappear into nirvana, and why not go all the way with the qualities of a fully awakened being and practice bodhicitta. And this is what this text is for, is to push us again and again and again to think about bodhicitta and to develop bodhicitta. And that's why, maybe you remember the first chapter is about what of this text? Just say something, you know. Maybe you do remember. If you have the text before you, then you can look it up.
The benefit of bodhicitta.
Exactly, the benefit of bodhicitta. So we talk, you know, he has to encourage himself also to say, hey, come on, you know, it's difficult to practice. It's difficult to develop. So when something is difficult, we need to know the benefit of it. Otherwise, we're not going to, you know, we're not doing the trouble. And actually, the 7th chapter goes very well with the 1st chapter, because by the 7th chapter, we seem to have forgotten about the benefits of bodhicitta, and then we get lazy, and we forget about the shortcomings of samsara, and we don't trust our potential to get out of it. Right? 2nd, 3rd chapter is about, you know, is about what we need to do in order to start on this journey of bodhicitta. So he talks about confession, purification, taking refuge, making offerings, basically about 7 limbs. At the end of the 3rd chapter, he is taking the Bodhisattva vows. He makes the step. He says, yes, this is my path, you know, not individual liberation, but I want to attain full awakening. And chapter 4 and 5 is about conscientiousness and awareness, is about, you know, being careful, starting to work with the mind, that you're not creating more negative karma. And then 6th chapter is about patience. 7th chapter here is about enthusiasm, so that we're not giving up. 8th chapter is called concentration or meditation, but it's more about, you know, about how to exchange oneself for others, because with patience that we have already developed, it's good to go back from time to time, actually, just to fly over the verses that we have been looking at. You know, then we start to say, yeah, this is what I wanted. And to feel inspired by this, knowing what we want. Then, so the 7th chapter is about enthusiasm or joyous effort, that we are happy that we can do all these things. And then the 8th chapter is kind of more the making the step, exchanging myself for others. But exchanging myself for others, very often we Westerners, we try to do far too early, and then we collapse. We're not strong enough to do that. We're not, you know, we're still nutniks. And so it's difficult to exchange ourselves for others, because very often our motivation for exchanging ourselves for others is to impress other people when we look. This is why looking at our motivation is really important. So it doesn't mean that you don't exchange yourself for others. Everybody understands here what I mean by saying exchanging oneself. The other's happiness is more important than mine. So every time we do it, it's really good to look at our motivation. And when we feel that the motivation is not quite right, because I'm doing this with this person, because I want to impress that person, but I wouldn't do this with another person, then we see that, ooh, you know, it's not so good. So we work on our motivation, and we work especially on equanimity. Yeah, it's so important, that one for bodhicitta, equanimity. And me personally, I'm very far away from that. So let's do the reflection, because otherwise we don't get to the death absorption. So try to sit as comfortable as you can, but with a straight back. I don't know if I should say Hagar, maybe put down your telephone and it's okay. You know, I'm also doing it very often. So it's okay when I listen to teachings, not while I'm talking.
No, I didn't realize I'm on camera too. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. It's okay. But just leave everything aside, put everything down. Don't be sorry. It's okay. It's absolutely not a problem. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said it because I didn't want to embarrass you. Don't feel embarrassed. It's okay. I'm just doing these. I'm saying these stupid things sometimes, which I shouldn't. And you relax. And just, again, like with every reflection, we connect with the body first. And just feel. Experience the body, sitting on the ground, the earth supporting us. Oh, it's such a good way to really connect, to be in the present. as Lama Yeshe used to say, you know, bring your mind where the body is, then the mind is in the present. And whatever happens, it only happens in the present. And we can do some relaxing. I think that this calm method is quite good. So it's C-A-L-M. So C is chest. You become aware of your chest as you're breathing in. When you breathe out, you totally open up. You become very spacious, nothing to hold there. You feel like the muscles relaxing, the cells opening up. Only the spine is holding. And also by out breath, you can go a little bit like breathing out all the tensions that we're holding. A would be for arms, so you go to your shoulders, sweep down your arms to your hands, where we feel the tingling that is always there. We're just not aware of it, because our focus can only be in one place. There again, if you feel any tensions, don't make your hands too heavy when they lie on your knees or in your lap. And C-A-L, leg, so you go down again, lower body like stomach, lower back, genitals, sweep down your legs to your feet. Very simple method. By breathing in, you are there in that spot, you experience the sensation. The moment you notice tensions, they actually relax by themselves. You don't even need to do something, but on the out breath, we become more spacious, we give more space. We don't need to hold any tensions to protect ourselves. Finally, the M is mouth, but we do the whole face. So, of course, first the mouth, teeth clench together sometimes, the cheeks also not totally relaxed, eyes, around the eyes, behind your eyes, and on. As ridiculous as it sounds, you can even relax your ears more than they are. Especially the mouth, the cheeks, and the eyes, and the front. Okay, we'll start the reflection and about the motivation, and maybe we can try something to experience, to feel something. So we think we have natural compassion, but that compassion is also dependent on understanding suffering. If we don't understand suffering, we don't have compassion. So let's say if somebody has a very expensive car, at the moment it's Tesla, isn't it? It's the Teslas that are the kind of upper cars. Used to be Ferrari and Lamborghini. So then you think somebody is really taking good care of that car, and then somebody else comes and is jealous, and with a key kind of goes, you know. And the person who is like, you know, it's like this Tesla is a part of his body. He feels so much pain because of that one scratch. Maybe it's not so relevant these days anymore. Would you have compassion for this person? Probably not, because most probably you have a car full of bumps, full of scratches, and you see that the car is still working. So why does he suffer? But he is suffering. So this is just an example how our natural compassion only comes up when we start to understand suffering is unwanted, but also when we start to understand that suffering has causes, and that's why we can end the suffering. Then it is compassion, otherwise pity. So think about somebody that is very close to you, that is not so well. Again, you know, don't take something that totally overwhelms you. There's no point. Somebody that you would really like to help. Or as Elisheva was saying, somebody that you can see, you understand that they are creating their own suffering. But it needs to be somebody that you like, somebody that you love. Try to feel that wish, that longing to be able to help them. Not just helping them to kind of stop temporary suffering, but to really be able to show them a state which is free from all suffering and the causes of suffering. Can you feel something in your heart? This wish, this longing, almost a need. It feels very natural when we like the person, when we love the person, and when we see, when we recognize their state that they're in at the moment of suffering. It can be mental, it can be physical, financial, no job, whatever. So then we need to expand a bit by seeing, these are not the only people who suffer, who have this kind of suffering, dissatisfaction, problem, difficulties, challenges. We start to see maybe the pain in our own heart becomes a little bit more spacious, has more space, not so painful anymore. Seeing we're all in the same boat, me included. I can't get myself out of dissatisfaction. I'm also in there when we start to understand our own situation and condition. Feel the wish to be free from it, to experience it. The wish to be able to live our value of connectedness, kindness, love, compassion, generosity, patience, tolerance, understanding. But then it's this question, do I trust that I have the potential not just to end my own suffering because I understand the causes that lie in my own mind, This would be the wish for liberation. Do I understand that practicing Buddhism, like, getting these methods and trying to put them into practice, living these methods, training them, do I trust that they will lead me to a state where there's no more dissatisfaction, no more suffering, and no more causes of suffering, the afflictive emotion? Sometimes to nourish that trust, we have to think about people that inspire us, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Look at his life that he has. He's what now, 87? Still teaching a lot. He can inspire so many people. He turns people towards practicing this path. Not because he wants to have many followers, but because he wants people to attain happiness, liberation, enlightenment. And he sees so much suffering and he hears so many difficult situations. Yet, is he depressed? So then we go back to our wish to be able to be of benefit to others. First, our loved ones. There's attachment in there, and attachment has the sting of compassion hurts too much. We need to feel it, then take the sting out by looking at shared humanity. And then we see how powerless we are. We can't avoid our own suffering and causes of suffering at the moment. We're working on it, that's clear. But forget about really inspiring somebody like His Holiness the Dalai Lama does, or Mingyu Rinpoche, Chada Rinpoche, Geshe-ma. We start to understand I have to have more skills in order to benefit others. This is why I want to go. Look, I'm not saying you have to think this, okay? This has to come from your side. Hey, how about becoming a fully awakened being with all these qualities? Being omniscient, really knowing what benefits, really knowing what harms. Not just short term, but also long term. How about having, developing the mind to such an extent to have universal love, universal compassion, universal wisdom, and the skillful me? How do I get there? By practicing the sixth perfection. First, developing bodhicitta. And the bodhicitta we develop by understanding how we have this need to help others free themselves from suffering. At the moment, for us, we're very limited being, but this can be expanded. We can see that, you have one child, there's compassion for one child. You have two children, you have compassion for both children. We train the mind to see everybody as our child. We have compassion for all beings. It's not an easy task. So when we see that this is what we really want, instead of harming others, benefiting them. When we see that at the moment, not much I can do, as Elisheva said. Then we look at the Buddha's teachings, we trust them, and we think, This is why I'm practicing. Because I want to go all the way and attain full awakening. So then you have developed bodhicitta. First, the wish to help all beings. Then understanding, oops, the way I am at the moment, I cannot fulfill that. Next step, is there a method? Is there a way? Is there a path? After examining the two truths, Four Noble Truths, understanding that we can end suffering, yeah, there is a path. Do I want to practice this? Yes, because I want to be free from suffering. But why? Because I want to have the skills to liberate all other beings. But nobody has to practice this. Everybody can, but nobody has to. You have to check. Is that motivation really there? Okay, far away, takes long time, very difficult. Who cares? Doesn't matter, as long as we keep going. Okay. We can stop the reflection. Ayala, is it a bit more clear now that you have to find out where you want to go? You know, at the beginning, when I started like my first 1 month course, I think I told you already, I got a bit upset, and there was a bit kind of, you know, they wanted to lead me to full enlightenment. And I thought, like, I don't want this. I just want to be a little bit more happier, or I just want to have a little bit better handle on my negative emotions, because I had a lot of fear, especially, you know, useless or kind of fear. I was afraid of people. There was absolutely no reason. So that's what I wanted. But then during that 1 month course, because it's intensive, right? Like you start at 6 in the morning, you finish at 10 at night or something like that. And it's for 1 month, and it's in Kopan. And I'm not saying it's the only place you can do that, but you know, this is the November course in Kopan, and you're exposed to that. It's kind of a brainwash. Yeah, so you're exposed to that for 1 month, and the 200 other people with you also on that course, and you have discussion groups and all this. So then the conditions are really good to understand that, hey, this is important. You know, just 1 weekend or a few days or whatever, maybe not so much. I don't know if I would have just done weekend courses, if I would have engaged so much. I'm not sure. Okay. But nobody has to develop bodhicitta. It has to become voluntarily. So then, you know, towards the end of the course, I was thinking, yeah, why not? You know, why not go for the best? Human mind always goes for the best. You have 2 apples, you know, you have a choice between one is beautiful and healthy and the other one is half rotten. Which one do you take? Or even more, you know, drastic, the way we spontaneously always want the best. You have two how do you call it, bills, you know, shekels, 2 bills of 50 shekels. One is old and dirty, the other one is new. Which one do you give when you pay? Which one do you keep for yourself? Spontaneously. You're all laughing. So I want an answer. Which one do you give?
We give the old because we want to keep the new. And it's ridiculous because they're exactly worth the same 50 shekels.
And you know, the funny thing is, shared humanity, everybody does it. Very spontaneously. So you can start changing that, and you start, you know, we start changing our habits. And you start to give the new ones, and you keep the old ones. Or when you give something away, you have Dharma books, and you know they're 2 of the same kind. You give away the new one and you keep the old one, which has your notes in it anyway. So motivation, yeah, I mean, Buddha taught both. Buddha taught one vehicle that leads to individual liberation, and he also taught the other vehicle, which leads to the liberation of all sentient beings. So both vehicles are legal. Is that clear? Is that okay? And you decide, you know. But if you decide, no, Mahayana, you know, or His Holiness calls it now the Sanskrit tradition, which is enlightenment for all beings. You want to work for that, or the Pali tradition, which is your own liberation. So, you know, if you go like, oh, no, I think liberation for all, it's too difficult. Well, then you will probably get upset when you hear all the time, you know, mind transformation, putting others in front of you, Tonglen, all these kind of things. If you're not inspired by it, then it's very difficult to practice, because it's not an easy path, right? Because we have to give up a lot of what the ego wants. And sometimes they say that we have imprints from the past where we have like definite kind of imprints that one would end up in a Sanskrit tradition like Mahayana, and then or like the enlightenment for all beings, and the other one would end up in the Pali tradition. And you can see, you know, the Pali tradition has more people practicing it already at the time of the Buddha also. So, but it's fine. Okay. So shall we continue with the text, or do you want to say something or ask something to what we just did?
I have a question.
Netta.
It's bothering me also, because I wasn't present in the first two lessons, but it's interesting that the chapter of enthusiasm is talking about death.
Yeah, why is that interesting?
It's interesting.
Oh, death is something that really gets going, you know. Well, were you surprised? Were you thinking that enthusiasm is just you and everything's fine and everything? You know, when you look at the Lamrim meditation, it says the reflection on death is the reflection on death is that one that makes the deepest imprint on your mind. And we can definitely see how people change their life drastically when they start having a sickness that they know they're not going to live much longer anymore. And it goes two ways. Either their life becomes totally useless and they just spend all the money and have all the fun they want. Maybe it's not useless. Maybe when they die, they go, wow, good, I spent all the money, wonderful. Other people turn towards things that are seemingly more interesting. But again, you know, what is more beneficial? Again, it's the individual who has to decide. But he talks about death in order to get us going. And the enthusiasm and the joy comes when every morning you wake up and you go, wow, I haven't died last night. So, Noah, you have given me the screen share already. So when we look at the verses here about death and dying, there we go. You know, here we had this one the last time. Do you remember when it says their faces flowing with tears and their eyes red and swollen with sorrow? My relatives will finally lose hope, and I shall behold this vision of the messenger of death. That when we see it's maybe the last moment that he says, oh, wow, you know, here, I'm done for. That we start to understand, I'm dying. Yeah. So he's using that verse in order to make us understand you cannot escape death. So when you want to change your life, then it's too late. So we have to think about this again and again and again and again. So these few verses here, 8 and 9, and is about preparing us so that we can die without regret. So it's about this, you know, death in this life. Now, the next ones are about being afraid of rebirth, like preparing your rebirth, not just preparing a good death. But when you prepare a good death also, is like, you have to know what is it, in what way shall I live so I can die so I die without regret. So that's, again, it's your choice. So then here's the moment of death where he goes, tormented by the memory of my evils and hearing the sounds of hell. In terror, I shall close my body in excrement. What virtue can I do in such a delirious state? Okay, I don't know in Hebrew, or I don't even know in English, but in German we have this saying that when you're very afraid, that you shit in your pants. Or when somebody has a lot of fear, somebody who is like, that's then the name, the one who shits in his pants all the time. Do you have this expression also in Hebrew? That, we can see that when people are very afraid, you might have seen it, that they can't retain their urine. But here it's talking about excrement. And anyway, at the time of death also, we have to be aware of this. It's actually quite good to know that many people at the moment of death, they can just not retain these things, and it just gets out of the body. So if then at the time of death you are embarrassed because of that, then it's not going to help you to have a peaceful death. It's really good to know at the moment of death, the body, even before I die, I might smell. You might have noticed that also with people who are near to death. I might start to smell. I will not be able to retain these things that I usually go in a very private place to kind of let the body discharge them. And I'm not happy when somebody sees me. So even, when we go out in nature, we hide behind a bush or a tree if there is one, isn't it? Because we learn it is not a good thing that somebody is watching me when when these things get discharged. I think there was a French film at one point, maybe Edouard or maybe Einat, maybe I think it was by Chabrol, maybe, where the society was doing the opposite things. They were, eating in private and they were going to the toilet in public. Can you remember, Edouard?
Yeah, it's actually, it's a French film, but it's by Buñuel.
Ah, it was by Buñuel, not by
Le
Chabrol.
charme discret de la bourgeoisie.
Voilà, exactement. Donc, so there was a movie like this because, what is right and what is wrong? For us, of course, it is right that we eat in company and that we go and make caca in privacy. But why is it like that? Because we decided, like, if you look at your dog or your cat, they need to go toilet, they're not finding a space where to hide. Some actually do. Maybe they start to imitate us. Some don't like to be watched, by the way, some of the animals, but anyway, but at least they're not hiding. Okay, so what it talks also about is that the whole, what we call normal, and we think what is like this, at the moment of death, it starts to shift and it starts to change. And this is why I find these death absorptions, I find them really helpful so that we can prepare for that and we're not going to be surprised and we're not going to be afraid. And if some Buddhist friend, Tibetan Buddhist friend is with you and you all of a sudden start to say, I'm falling, and this Buddhist friend can say, yes, don't worry, it's normal, you will calm down. If you have friends next to you who say, oh, no, it's no problem, you're lying on the bed, don't be afraid and all this, but you feel that you are falling, you will get upset. So if a dying person is telling you that they're falling, so please do not try to calm them down by saying, no, but you're not falling, you're lying on a bed. Because they have the feeling of falling. The same way that you can have the feeling of falling when you are asleep, because the same thing happens when you go to sleep. Has anybody ever had that feeling? You have fallen asleep and all of a sudden you wake up with, and you have a feeling of falling? Does it feel real? it feels very real. It's because the earth element loses its power, the aggregate to form, and then the earth does not support you anymore, although it does support you anymore. And this is, Edouard, where we say, is there a certain reality? How can we have a feeling of falling when we are on a bed? If the feeling of, if the bed is real. I'm going there because my bed is right here. So, I just have to roll over to go to the bed because it's just a studio. So like this. So it's really good to know. So this is, the time of death. He's preparing us, and he's just saying, hearing the sounds of hell. Probably, when people have had very negative lives and have done a lot of negative things, when the conscious mind is not able to retain that anymore, like to put it into the subconsciousness, it's possible that it comes up. And I have seen it, I have heard it. People, sometimes it's very small things, but things that make them really afraid and really tormented, So it's a bit like this, if we have not learned serenity in the face of all the uncertainty of life, and we run away from every negative emotion that we have, and we suppress it instead of looking at it and what's going on, and with awareness trying to dissolve it, then at the moment of death, this might come. How many of you have done longer meditation retreats, like Vipassana, Shamatha, things like that, when you're not getting entertained all the time? Okay. Did you have memories coming up? Agar also, okay? Did you have memories coming up, sitting there trying to keep your mind focused on what you were supposed to do? Was it memories about very good situations and very beautiful things you've done, or what? Hagar is smiling.
Both.
Both.
Obviously both, yeah.
Okay, both. Which ones emotionally kind of take you more away from the object of meditation? Or which ones make you more agitated?
I can't remember. Can't remember.
Try to see next time. I was really surprised in my first 1 month Vipassana retreat how much of the negative stuff came up that I had done to other people, which I was absolutely not aware of anymore. I felt so bad. I felt like, no, I was a horrible person. And and also in the 3 months Bodhisattva retreat. So when the retreat was finished, I was kind of going around saying sorry to everybody, and everybody saying, what are you talking about? So it's like, whether I experienced it as really nasty what I did or others didn't, it doesn't really matter what others experienced, but I experienced it as nasty, right? So then it's bad conscience coming up. So this is a little bit here when he says, when you hear the sounds of hell, kind of thinking, it's not, hell is not a place in another dimension. Hell is in our mind, right? So, but we hear the negative karma starts to already ripen, and then we start getting afraid, because what is it based on? On our negative action. So we know, as a Buddhist, where you're going to end up. This one is about the moment of death here, that we have to be prepared. That one thing is that everything changes. And then the next one is, if even in this life I shall be gripped with fear like that of a fish being rolled in hot sand, why even mention the unbearable agonies of hell that will result from my unwholesome deeds? So we need to be quite clear now, this is not where I want to go. I don't want to go to a lower state, right? Because we're so sensitive. I mean, even now we have all the resources to become healthy again and all this, but in hell, we will be even more sensitive, and as hungry ghosts, and you all studied these places where you can be reborn, isn't it? Probably. Okay, 2 people want to ask something. Maybe I just finish with this. You know, we couldn't bear, it's not 5 fish, by the way, sorry, I only saw it now. It's live fish, you know. So this would be when you roll a live fish in hot sand, there's agony. So then the hotels are probably like this. So we have to be aware that our negative actions will throw us into a lower state if we don't purify. And so verse number 12 is like, now, can I remain at ease like this when I have committed the actions that will bear fruit? If my delicate infant's body encountering boiling acids in the hell of tremendous heat. So this is what should make us become aware that we need to purify. Yeah, but also to make us aware now with the human body, we can still purify and we can still create a positive karma that then the mind in a very natural way goes to a higher state, especially if we work with bodhicitta, because bodhicitta is then when the mind is a bit directionless. You know, if you're able to die with the thought of no matter where I will be reborn, I want to be reborn in a place where I can be of benefit to others and continue to practice, then your mind will have like a compass and it will go there where you meet the Dharma again. So who wants to ask a question? I had a notice. Okay, Ariela.
Hello. If you could please go back to paragraph 10, the last sentence.
Yeah.
And could you a little bit elaborate on that? What do they mean by virtue at that moment, of that delirious moment?
What virtue can I do in such a delirious state? Yeah, where will my mind turn? So when you study karma, you know, they say when you've done really strong, big actions, I tell you already now, we're not going to the death absorptions. We'll keep it for next time. You know, where I will explain, or I give you the chart, what happens at the time of death, so that we can prepare. But I want to take some time for that, so it's not today. It will be next time. Hopefully we're not dying in the meantime. So when you study karma, it says what will ripen or what will throw you in your next rebirth, okay? So they say when you've done really big stuff, like killing a lot of people or saving a lot of people, you know, like beneficial or virtuous, saving a lot of people with a good intention, not just to become famous and earn a lot of money, or killing a lot of people like this. If you've done really strong actions, or if you have developed shamatha also, if you do have shamatha, you're not falling into the lower states. So then whatever is like very strong, then that will ripen first. That will determine where you're going to be reborn. When this is not, you know, nothing big is there, your last thought. So even if you've done a lot of negative stuff in your life, but your last thought will be, oh, I want to be of benefit to others, or even just regret, you know, thinking like, oh, may I do a better way in next life, or taking refuge, thinking about your guru, think about your practice, thinking about this. But this we have to train now. And this is why he's giving us this really horrible scenarios here, you know, so that we are prepared. Yeah, like tormented by the memories of my evils. When your memories of your negative actions come up, which they might come up, and I've seen it with dying people that they do come up, then, okay, in what way, what can I do now, these last few moments when I'm still conscious? Yeah. So now is the time to practice with enthusiasm, netta, and joyous effort. That's why he takes death, so that we, you know, so we understand I will die anyway. How do I want to die? I want to die with a good thought. Can I wait until I die if I just want to die with a good thought? Or do I need to practice having good thoughts when life is getting really difficult? So then when life is getting difficult, instead of running away, we go, wow, now I can practice positive thoughts, loving thoughts, compassionate thoughts. For example, you have to get out of your life. Instead of clinging, I don't want to die, and clinging to your friends and family, you go like, wow, thank you so much. You've been so kind to me. You've made my life so beautiful. It's a totally different attitude. So this is, your last thought. And I think then the third is what you are most accustomed to, what you're naturally doing. And I think these two, sometimes if you read the text, sometimes they say what you done last, or is like the second one that ripens, or sometimes they say what you are most habituated to. If you're habituated to react in a good way, you have a good chance. If you're habituated to react with anger and attachment and panic, then probably that. And then if that is also equal, then, well, whatever. Noah also is burdened to ask something.
Yeah. What does the text say about people that are dying with dementia, Alzheimer?
Well, the texts say nothing about this. So now I don't want to say there was no dementia, was no Alzheimer's. The texts say nothing about this. I think I already told you the story about this nun Ursula, who was the first Western nun in Dharamsala, and she was already in Dharamsala when you could still go and have a cup of tea with the Dalai Lama. There were very few Westerners, and it was still very open, the whole thing. And so I was in Dharamsala when she was there also, but she had, towards the end of her life, she had Alzheimer's. And because, of course, His Holiness knew her so well, he kind of saw her maybe 2 weeks before she died, and he gave some instructions what to do. And she was very attached to dogs, and she had a house in the nunnery. Geshe-ma could tell you more about her because she was living there at the same time in the same nunnery. I was living at Tushita. So she would always take like stray dogs who were sick, or puppies, and they were in the house. So His Holiness said, take away the puppies and the dogs, because at the time of death, she could generate attachment to the dogs and then be reborn as a dog. But make sure the last few moments, even with dementia, you see, because it's the habits that are, the mind goes into a subtle state. You lose contact with your brain. So the brain is not so important anymore. The mind goes into a subtler state quite quickly. You cannot reason anymore. You cannot think anymore in any case, whether Alzheimer's or dementia or whatever. But he said, make sure that she sees the picture of a Buddha before she dies. So one can notice signs that life is going out by, for example, the breath. When people start to breathe a bit like, very difficult to breathe in and very long breathing out, then it's not going to last so long. And Nimatsam, who was taking care of her, so she took the statue of a Buddha on one hand, and she kind of closed all the other lights, and she put the torch on the Buddha. So Ursula, she opened her eyes, she saw the Buddha, she smiled, relaxed, and died. Because it looked as if the Buddha kind of, touched something in her dement mind that she recognized. So this is what I can say from experience, but the texts, they don't really say anything like that.
I want to say something.
Are you at age that you are going to die with dementia, or, you already last time asked that? Something that goes in that. Maybe let me ask Noah first. Why? Can you tell me why? Would you like to tell me why you this is so important?
It's not. I'm curious because my mom had dementia before she died for many years. So I'm curious.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is said that everybody goes through these absorptions that we will do next Wednesday. I will start with this next Wednesday. So then everybody goes through these absorptions. So the more this is why also you have to practice them. In Tantra, you practice them all the time. When you do highest yoga Tantra, you dissolve everything into emptiness. You go through these absorptions so that the mind becomes familiar with it. So you don't need your intellect to recognize them. Okay? So that's why, I mean, that's the only chance we have, is that by familiarizing ourselves with these kind of things, so that we're not surprised, we're not afraid, we recognize it. And every time you recognize it, you're happy. You know, also when in our life here, while we are alive, we don't like to be confused. The moment we recognize something, we go like, this is what it is. And then we relax. Yes, Netta.
I just want to add something about dementia. That when I see with my grandmother and my husband's grandmother and people with dementia, it's something with the nature of the personality comes up very, like my grandmother all the time told us how much I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, something with positive nature without remembering or connecting, just came up very clear.
Right. Because she had that
character or habits or way of thinking, so it came up.
You see, the way it will go at the time of death, we have no idea now, because this is when you are with dying people. You can ask people who work in the hospice. There's nothing you can rely on. You know, when we do courses, we do on Sunday, another one, you know, about death and dying here in Martigny. When you do these courses, and I'm really lucky because I have a nurse that is working in a palliative station, and I have an art therapist also, with 3 of us are doing the course, who is also, you know, working in a hospice. So, you know, these people, when they see people dying every day, actually, you know, they say, you cannot, you know, the best way to prepare for death is to know that you cannot prepare. Because then you're not surprised at anything. But still it's good to, you know, to look at this could happen, that could happen, and to really share what people have experienced with, you know, being around people who were dying, so that we are prepared what could happen, and to see it could be wonderful, but most of the time is not. Most of the time it's really difficult. I mean, just talk to people who work in hospices or palliative stations, and, you know, like this. Most of the time it's difficult because we cling and we grasp and we don't know where we're going. Although, you know, this whole thing, I don't want to die because I don't know where I'm going. Just remind yourself, every night when you go to sleep, you go to a place where you don't know where you're going. And you go alone. And we're not afraid of going to sleep. Of course, we're sure that we're going to wake up next morning, but how can we be so sure? But this is, you know, this fear of death, when you fear it coming up, then just remind yourself. But every time I go to sleep, I don't know if I'm going to wake up, and I'm going to a place I have no control. I have no idea where I'm going. So why being so afraid of death? And I'm leaving my family behind, also. I can't take them with me to my dreams. Sometimes they appear, but sometimes they don't. Do you find that helpful, thinking like this? So again, familiarize yourself with this. I did this every night when I went to sleep. I went to a place I didn't know where to go. So then also, before you go to sleep, you know, generate bodhicitta. Think how wonderful, you know, may all beings be happy, may all beings be well. We can do 2 more minutes like this, and then you can go to sleep to finish the class. Is that more or less okay with this? And I tell you, I make a big note, death absorptions, for next Wednesday, and we will start with this. Okay? I think you already have the chart, isn't it? And some of you have heard it before anyway. So, you know, it's just a repetition. Good to repeat. So then when you are with somebody who is dying, you can remind them this is normal. And the next one will be like this. You can prepare them. And when it happens to you, Instead of being afraid, you go, oh, okay, now it's happening. Let's see what's next. Then you're focused and you're not afraid. Because when we are afraid, fear shies away from what is happening, doesn't want to see, right? Okay, so let's dedicate in a kind of bodhicitta way. By thinking whatever I'm doing in terms of, positive actions, being kind to others, studying Dharma, being generous, being patient, and all this, may it all lead to my own awakening. Again, when you say these words, try to experience something, not just blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah is okay, because then also the mind gets familiar with it. But bring it down to your heart. And another thing, just again, it's just a suggestion. But sometimes when I'm really nasty, I'm not really nasty anymore, only in my thought. Not even there, actually. But when I'm not so kind, that I'm telling myself, I don't want to be like this. I want to be kind. I want to be compassionate. This I'm telling myself. So you need to see whether that works for you. Not to be a goody-goody kind of, that everybody laughs or whatever. But just for the purpose of being kind, being compassionate, having skill. So whatever positive energy that I have created, I and all other sentient beings, may it lead to that state that all beings are able to live their potential of being totally free from suffering and causes of suffering. And I want to contribute to that. And the only way I can contribute to that when I continue practicing, training these methods. Nobody says that you have to be perfect. Nobody says that you have to be able to do this. Only you telling yourself all the time, but I can't do this. You only have to train. You fail, you train again. You fail, you train again. You fail, you train again. This is how this works. It's long, it's difficult, it's painful, it's worthwhile. But it's good to think about goal, and to dedicate for that goal. Everybody has the potential to be free from suffering. The purpose of my life is to be of benefit to beings in order, first now with my limited capacities as much as I can, not to harm them. That already creates positive energy, not harming when we could harm. And instead of harming as much as I can, helping them. Not in an obsessive way, not in a way, oh, this is my duty, not in a way that then, people like me or admire me. But in order to create the karma to become. And may this happen very, very, very. Okay. Good. So let's end here. That's okay. Again, you have to text, so try to look at these verses. If it makes you panic and you think, this is not creating enthusiasm, then try to see, okay, what else is creating enthusiasm? The joy about precious human rebirth comes, I think, verse 14, if I'm right. See, so here first we generate fear, wholesome fear. That, how do I want to, what can I do that I can die without regret? It's very skillful, this whole thing. Then when we are afraid enough, then he goes, hey, but look, you have perfect human rebirth. So you can practice, you're still alive and you can create the causes for a good rebirth. And so here he kind of switches backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. So he uses both, he uses the fear of death, but he uses also the Dharma method. But hey, you can create positive karma so that you don't have to be afraid at the time. I find it skillful. I don't know about you. So Okay. Thank you so much for listening. I wish you a very nice evening. And
Thank you very much.
And maybe see you next Wednesday. Yeah? Okay. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you, Alina.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.